Okay, my friends, it is Tuesday, February 11th, 2025, and this is the Daily Brief. A lot has happened. I actually divided this and I took out some of the stories just for the sake of time. And I think I'm going to do a segment called Bizarre Stories, just so you can see some of the wacky things that are happening. But for right now, let's look at this. 1,390 Russians off the battlefield, 13 tanks, 31 armored fighting vehicles, 44 artillery systems, 169 vehicles and fuel tanks. Now, these numbers tell a story. Like the 169, why are these all being hit? Are they rushing into battle or are they being targeted by drones? I think it's the latter, and they're not going anywhere because I think there's a lack of fuel, but I don't know for sure that that's the case. But 1390. So that's high for February, but low for the rest of the month. This is the second highest in February, but still, there's nothing that's anywhere near the average of the previous 3 months. So, okay, that's where we are with casualty rates. Okay, 124 Shahed drones launched, 57 were shot down, another 64 were suppressed by electronic warfare. But it's not the drones that were doing the damage; it's missiles. And I saw this Anton Goroshenko showing this video of Ukrainian helicopters hunting for Shahed drones. So there's the helicopters are flying, they're doing their thing, trying to get these drones. There are people on the ground shooting at them. There's electronic warfare, so they're doing what they can. But really, the problem yesterday was cruise missiles, caliber cruise missiles from Crimea toward Ukraine. As a result of missile strikes, 9 settlements have been left without gas supply, and they know what they're doing. They're trying to target civilians and energy infrastructure in the middle of winter in order to make them miserable. 2 women aged 18 and 44 were wounded in Nikopol, while 2 elderly residents were injured in Marhantensk. I don't know if I pronounced that right. I don't know that I've ever talked about that city before. Russian forces targeted Ukraine's gas infrastructure overnight. Here we see the same kind of thing in Poltava region. It was gas infrastructure that was attacked. 9 settlements are without gas supply. Kyiv region, a daycare, 2 school buildings, a children's playground, and a private home were damaged. Dnipropetrovsk region, 4 people were injured, 35 homes and 11 buildings damaged. And Russia continues to attack this infrastructure. This is their readiness for negotiations, right? This is what they're trying to do to push people to push against their own government. And I don't think it's going to work. So Russia launched up to 19 missiles at the Poltava region last night, according to the Air Force. The number of intercepted missiles is still being clarified. We don't know exactly what that is. Same thing, Bridget Brink, the U.S. ambassador, talking about this. These attacks disrupt vital energy supplies to the people of Ukraine in the middle of winter, and that's the key, in the middle of winter. Okay, now on the other side of the ledger, Ukraine was attacking Russian industry and oil infrastructure. Bad night for Russian industry as Ukrainian drones launched massive strikes on Saratov oil refinery and Engels Air Base. I saw nothing about Engels Air Base as far as like planes or runway or buildings or that sort of thing. So everything was about the oil refinery, which is very close to that. Saratov, by the way, is very far away from Ukraine. If you look at a map, you see Ukraine here, you see Moscow, and it seems like it's about equidistant from where Moscow is from the edge of Ukraine. Okay. So that's Saratov. The refinery that they hit produces 20 types of fuel, including diesel and gasoline, supplying the Russian army. And I think so it's either winter or a lack of diesel or poor logistics or some combination of those things that's causing what we're seeing with the lower levels of attacks, the lower levels of casualties, and the higher levels of the attacks on vehicles. And I'll explain the attacks on vehicles in just a moment. So high precision debris hit one of the key enemy fuel infrastructure facilities in Saratov. Firefighters have been trying to tackle the fire all night, but so far attempts have been unsuccessful. Okay, so we talked about the donkeys that were being replacing the vehicles. No more vehicle. Due to the lack of motor transport and fuel and lubricants in the military unit, I request your petition to the higher command to provide me with a war horse in the amount of 1 unit of whatever that type of breed is, I'm not familiar with, which is still in accordance with the order of the Red Army of 1701-1918, which is still in effect to perform official combat tasks. Well, they've gotten donkeys, so that's where they are. Okay, now It's interesting when you're looking at this. It's fascinating how the numbers have gone down. I've been pointing this out for the last few weeks now. The December was high. The number of assaults was highest in December, and in January was reasonably high, but February kind of dropped like a rock. But what happened in early January, just before Biden left office? Um, Sanctions on oil. And then what else was happening simultaneously were drone attacks on oil. And so I think there's something to that connection, but I can't prove that. So take it with a grain of salt. I'm telling you, take it with a grain of salt. That's the best I can figure out. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Russian invaders made 47 attacks. And so this higher number is somewhat correlated with this higher number of 1390. I think those are connected. In fact, you can look at one and kind of anticipate what the other is going to be. Ukrainian forces recently advanced near Pokrovsk. Russian forces recently advanced in Kursk, Chasiv Yar, and Pokrovsk as well, just a different side of Pokrovsk. Okay, now, this was absolutely fascinating, and I think this is actually the big story today, and it's really powerful. So, Ukrainian Defense Minister Umarov announced that the Ukrainian drone line project on February 10th as part of an ongoing Ukrainian effort to integrate drone and ground operations. So, what you're actually seeing here is that, okay, remember a couple summers ago when there was the line that they kept running into minefields and they were trying to storm and they kept getting repelled and it just didn't go well for Ukraine. Well, they didn't have combined arms. They didn't have generally you'd want to have infantry with supported by artillery and tanks and that's armor, and then you'd want to have an air force, doing its flyover, suppressing the enemy, keeping them down. Okay, so they don't have the air force component here. And so the Air Force component is actually drones, but it's a smaller Air Force component. It's a closer range version of that. So, but I think that's what's happening here, and I'll try to explain with an analogy in just a moment. Umarov stated that the Ukrainian military will scale up 5 existing drone regiments and brigades in the Ukrainian military and border guard service, and will integrate infantry and drones into a single strike system. So infantry and drones into a single strike system. So they're having combined arms effect here if they can pull this off, which will enable Ukrainian forces to create kill zones 10 to 15 kilometers deep, will provide constant aerial support and infantry cover, and will detect and destroy Russian forces before they can approach Ukrainian positions. Ukraine's ground forces reported that the expansion of 5 such existing drone units is only the first stage of the drone line project. Now, so this is really, really interesting. It made me think of this book. Yeah, it's called "The Score Takes Care of Itself" by Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh was a coach for the San Francisco 49ers. His title, his nickname was the Genius. Well, he had a quarterback at one point that had no arm. I mean, not no arm literally, but he just couldn't throw very far. The quarterback's the guy that throws the football in American football, and he could only throw like 10 or 20 yards, and that's not very far. And like he couldn't throw it all the way down the field, that sort of thing. So he devised a strategy around this where he just throw these short little 5 yards here, 7 yards there, 3 yards there, 5, 10 here, right? And he just kept the other side off balance by doing just these little throws. But he could march all the way downfield doing that. Well, this is kind of what, by the way, I'll put the link to this below this video. It's a great book if you're interested in that sort of thing. Okay, but so that's what's going on here. They're going to have drones essentially do a short range version of what airplanes and helicopters and whatever would be doing otherwise to back off the enemy. This project likely formalizes and provides additional support to ongoing Ukrainian efforts to expand drone units and increase their coordination with regiments and brigades, while keeping regular units and drone units separate in order to support drone units' more rapid combat and technological adaptations. Now, what are the Russians doing? The Russians are doing exactly the opposite. It's like seeing the Cold War play out again with the free world doing this and the Soviet bloc doing that. Okay, so look at this. This is absolutely amazing. Ukraine's efforts to integrate drone operations with ground operations significantly differ from Russian efforts to centralize drone units. So Russian efforts to centralize drone units have attempted to augment Russia's drone capabilities by expanding state control over drone operators and developing and increasing their incorporation into the Russian military bureaucracy. Well, that's not going to be very effective at all. You can see that coming. Like that is going to be be the assessment here. ISW continues to assess that the Russian Ministry of Defense's efforts to centralize and reorganize drone units and monopolize drone production and procurement processes may complicate Russia's forces' ability to rapidly innovate and adapt to new technologies and combat techniques. I think that's absolutely fair. Everything that we know about centralization, like I'm a professor of management. My teaching, what my title is, I'm the chair for leadership, and I teach leadership kind of courses. But management is the broader thing, and anybody within this discipline will tell you centralizing is going to do certain things, and being decentralized will do certain other things. And Ukraine has chosen the kind of decentralized path, and Russia the centralized path, and we'll see how that works out. Okay, just a couple last things. The people of Georgia continue to rally against Russia's seizure of their government. Tonight, this is day 75, and they're still out there in the streets. Wow. Tulsi Gabbard is about to be confirmed, it looks like. And this is, yeah, that vote's going to happen today. We'll see how that works. If you're interested and you're an American citizen, you want to call your senator, the number is 202-224-3121. You still have a little time. Peskov says that a significant part of Ukraine wants to become Russia and that it has already become Russia, and that's a fact. Well, it's not really a fact. You kind of gobbled it up, but we'll see what has to happen yet. Finally, on this day in 1940, the USSR and Nazi Germany signed a German-Soviet commercial agreement under which we provided the Nazis raw material for their war machine. Yeah, like what? Well, like tons of oil and cotton and manganese and phosphates and chrome and rubber and soybeans. And the final comment here was 2,000 kilograms of platinum, but none of which was used for bad things. Yeah. The leopard hasn't changed his stripe or spots, or tiger doesn't change his stripes, and that's just where we are. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you for today. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.